Payton arrested?
Yes, Your Honor. Who we call Richard Lowe. Okay.
Solemnly swear the testimony that you will now give to me before this court should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. After that,
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Officer Lowe. Would you please state your full name, spelling your last for the record, please?
Richard Allen Lowe, L-O-W.
Okay. And it's Officer Lowe, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Officer Lowe, can you tell me how it is you're employed?
With Travis County Sheriff's Office,
Are you-
Corrections Officer,
Okay. Now, how long have you been employed as such?
19 years.
Okay, so you've been with TCSO 19 years the entire time as a corrections officer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you worked both at the Travis County Jail downtown and at Del Valley, or just Del Valley?
Just Del Valley.
Okay, so the entire career you've been out at Del Valley?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about the places you've worked within Del Valley?
I've worked in the warehouse, at the laundry, Building 1, Building 4 and Honors, HSB, my second tour at HSB.
Okay. So, in Building 1 is just a large building where they house inmates, is that right?
Yes, sir.
The same with the honors unit as well?
Well, Honors is kitchen now. It's
Oh.
kitchen trustees.
Okay. So, you also stated that you worked at HSB once before,
Yes, sir.
and HSB, we've heard is already is the Health Services Building, is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And is that your current duty station as well?
HSB, yes.
Okay. And how long have you been working at HSB this last time?
I'm on my third year right now.
So you started in 2011? Is that
November 2010.
And what shift do you work out there?
I'm on A shift right now, the 6 to 2.
And HSB is kind of a connected unit, is it not? That they have like medical connected to it, but also they have a big unit where the prisoners are held with a day room and cells along the side. Is that right?
Yes, there's 4 different units that are basically the same. Besides the medical, we have a small medical section in the middle of the building.
Okay. And so, in your capacity as a corrections officer there at HSB, you said you worked the A shift, which was 6 to 2, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you had any contact with an inmate by the name of Brandon Daniel?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. And do you see Brandon Daniel in courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Could you describe what he's wearing, please?
I can't see the computers in the way.
Okay. You're welcome to stand up and take a look if you like.
A blue suit.
Okay. And so, you've had with Brandon Daniel, that's been over the course of the time that he's been watching them, making sure they're secure, such as that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. During that time, has he ever given you any trouble?
No, sir.
Okay. Has he been compliant with you?
Yes, sir.
Has he followed your instructions and when you asked him to do something?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So he has always been respectful and polite to you?
Yes, sir, he has.
Okay. And let me ask you a question about just a procedural question. If you had heard or were, well, let me back up a second. In HSB, you sometimes have trustees come and work from other units, is that correct?
Not necessarily. We have trustees from inside our the same unit that
Okay.
works there.
So it's fair to say that there's an HSB, there's a level of people in HSB, even though they're in HSB for a variety of reasons, that are allowed to work as trustees?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And they perform capacity of fire watch and cleanup and things like that?
Well, the fire watch comes from Building 1,
Okay.
but as far as cleanup and serving trades and stuff like that, they're in the same building.
I see. So fire watch is a different.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if one of those trustees or fire watch people had come up to you or comes up to you while you're on a shift set, and this is a hypothetical, okay, and they tell you that they've overheard two inmates speaking about an escape plan, okay, and they give you the details of that escape plan, such as, you know, we're going to shoot up the courthouse or something like that. Is that something that you would report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is something you take seriously?
Yes, sir. I would make an informational report and send it up chain of command to my
Two inmates, would you attempt to separate them or something like that?
that does see how you react.
Okay. And so you would write a report and send it up the chain of command, and there'd probably be an investigation
Yes,
to be
sir.
handled by somebody else, not you.
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll pass with this, Sean.
How you doing, Deputy Lowe?
Pretty good.
Deputy Lowe, well, you dealt with Brandon Daniel off and on for the last couple of years,
Yes, sir.
so he was kind of in and out of HSB.
Yes, sir. He was. I've dealt with him in approximately 3 different units out there.
And how was he in dealing with you? How did he treat you?
He treated me, I guess, okay. I mean, I never had any problems with him.
Was he always very polite, a lot of yes sir, no sir?
Yes, sir.
You described him as being very compliant
Yes.
with you,
Mm-hmm.
not causing any trouble.
Yes.
Would you consider an inmate who made hooch to be someone who's compliant with jail rules?
Not necessarily, no.
Well,
I
not
mean-
necessarily or not.
Well, no. That's a violation.
It's a serious violation. Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
But you don't want inmates to have intoxicating beverages.
Correct.
So with somebody who's making intoxicating beverages, they would not be compliant with it.
Correct.
Somebody who's hoarding prescription pills, would they be compliant?
No, they would not.
Somebody who's keeping notes, tracking information about correction officers such as yourself,
Mm-hmm.
tracking information about their coming and goings and their schedule, would that person be compliant?
No, they would not.
Because y'all have rules against such things.
Yes, we do.
A person who's to civilians through against such things on them.
Yes, sir.
And rules against, you would be concerned if somebody is sending out a coded message because they might be planning to escape or harm somebody, correct?
Yes, sir.
That would cause you concern, wouldn't
Yes, it would.
it? But Brandon Daniel, you never saw him do any of this, did you?
No, sir, not my shift. And besides, I'm not allowed to go through their mail. We send it up, but we do shake down the rooms a lot and look for contraband. I have not yet found any in his room.
That's you. You have
This,
found.
yeah, just me.
And most prisoners are pretty ingenious about trying to hide stuff, aren't they?
They've come up with ways, yes.
So sometimes we can find it, sometimes we can't find it.
Exactly.
So if somebody's clever enough to find a good place to hide it, you might not ever find it, no matter how many times you search their room.
They have been known to move them around.
Based on what you have seen of the defendant, would you consider him to be a productive member of jail society? Based on what you've seen?
Well, from what I've seen, he's just been real quiet, never comes out of his cell. So, in the one times that I do interact with him, he just asks me for the newspaper or something, so that's about it.
That's how you want jail. That's how you want.
Oh, exactly, yes.
Would you consider him to be then a productive member of that jail society?
From what I see on my shift, yes, sir.
You are not, Pastor Wiggins.
Now, Officer Lowe, of course you can't testify about what other people, other corrections officers have seen or interacted with Mr. Brandon Daniels, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, I'm just asking you about your interaction.
Yeah, I can only tell you about mine.
Okay. And as far as his interaction with you, he's been compliant, and as Mr. Cobb just said, that's exactly how you want a prisoner to be, correct?
That is correct.
None further.
No question.
Thank you. You may step down. Your Honor, we call Officer Brad Payton. All right. Good morning. Yes. Good morning, Officer Payton. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
And I know we met briefly outside, and we have a friend in common, I should say.
I guess we do.
Your wife, I happen to know her. We just found out this morning, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this is the first time you've testified before, and how many years with TCSO?
About 23 years.
Okay. So your job is as a corrections officer with Travis County Sheriff's Department?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. And how long have you been employed? Did you say that again?
About 23 years.
All right. And in the 23 years that you've been with Travis County Sheriff's Office, has it always been as a corrections officer?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. And have you worked downtown, Del Valley, both?
Both.
Okay. And how long did you work downtown?
I worked downtown about 9 years.
Okay. And can you tell me roughly when that was?
That was 96 to 2004 to 2005.
All right. And from 2005 to current, you've been out at Del Valley?
Yes, sir.
And where is, how many different buildings have you worked out at Del Valley?
I've worked about 3 of them.
I'm sorry, say
3 of them.
3? All right. And which buildings were those?
The health services building and building 3, which also included some outer buildings, some smaller buildings that were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay. And where is your current duty station?
The health services building.
And how long have you been with the health services building?
Approximately 6 years.
Okay. And when did you start with health services?
Yeah,
So
about 6 years ago.
Going back
Yeah.
2008, say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, what shift do you work?
I work the morning shift, 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon.
Okay, and is that the A shift?
Yes, sir, that's what we call it.
Okay. And is that the same shift as Officer Lowe works?
Yes, sir.
Okay. About how many, approximately how many corrections officers works on that shift in HSP?
About 13 to 17 on a daily basis.
And Officer Lowe explained to us that there's several different units or pods. Is that what they're called?
Yeah, you could call them units or pods.
Okay.
We have 6.
6 where inmates are held in each one of those?
Yes, sir.
Now, in your capacity as a corrections officer out at HSB, have you had any contact with an inmate by the name of Brandon Daniel?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. And in what capacity have you had any contact with him?
Pretty much the daily supervision of the inmates. We oversee their daily activities.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you, not with regard to how you feel with other deputies or corrections officers, because obviously you can't know that, but with regard to your personal experience with him, has he given you any problems whatsoever?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay. And do you see him in the courtroom today?
I do.
Okay. And I know there's a monitor here for you to see. Could you identify him, please?
He's right there beside you on the right.
Okay. He's wearing a blue suit or a blue suit jacket.
Okay.
Is that right?
Where's that monitor? I can't see him.
Right here, sir.
Well, I can't see him behind that
Okay,
monitor.
okay, you can stand up.
Oh, yeah, yes, he's wearing a blue jacket.
You said that he's never given you any trouble?
That's correct.
He's been compliant with you and done what you've asked him to do?
As best as I can recall, yes.
Okay. And you know that he's had some trouble while he's been in HSB and has, broken some rules, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And are you familiar, you can personally observe those, you just heard about it?
No, once a guy's broken rules and gone through disciplinary sanctions, then we have to deal with them in a different manner. So I've had to deal with him in that different manner.
And when you've had to deal with him in a different manner based on some rules he's broken, he's still compliant with you and done what you asked him to do?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in your 23 years with TCSO, can you count the number of times that inmates have made hooch?
The number of times inmates have made hooch?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I've probably discovered it 25 times myself.
Okay. Thank you, Officer Payton.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, is it Deputy Payton,
It's Officer Payton.
Officer Payton? Is that P-A-Y or P-E-Y?
P-E-Y-T-O-N.
Officer Payton, how was it, this first time you testified?
Yes, sir.
How did you come to testify in this case?
I received a subpoena requesting to testify from that attorney.
Defense attorney subpoenaed you to come testify?
Yes, sir. There
You
you go.
didn't volunteer to be a character witness for Brandon Daniel?
No, sir. I wasn't asked to volunteer.
Okay, you didn't have a choice, right?
No, sir.
Let me ask you this. So when you're dealing with him, he's never given you any kind of hint that he might do something violent, has he?
No, sir.
You don't feel any threats from him, do you?
No, sir, I don't.
Compliance and politeness and following orders, that's how he's always beverage that the prisoner will make and drink and get intoxicated.
That's true.
He also has been found to be hoarding pills also,
That's what I understand.
which is also against jail regulations,
Sure is.
which is certainly not compliant, is it?
Not at all.
He was also found to be tracking the movements of jailers. We don't want people doing that, do we?
No, sir, but I'm not aware of that.
The jury has heard testimony from someone about it.
Okay.
So if he is indeed, or is found to be doing that, that would be against Travis County jail rules, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir.
Because that's a safety issue for you, yourself, and other jailers.
Yes, sir.
He was also, the jurors heard that he was also found to be trying to send coded messages through attorney mail, and that certainly is against the rules too, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And that would not be compliant with it.
No, sir.
And that would also be a jail safety issue.
It certainly could be.
And during the 23 years you've worked in the jail, have there been escapes from the Travis County jail?
Yes, sir, there have been.
You remember an escape from the jail with somebody using they had taken their sheets and braided their sheets.
I object to this testimony, Your Honor. The prosecutors testified for the witness and offering evidence that is not relevant to this trial. Ms. Mullins?
This is cross-examination, and I'm asking a leading question, which is allowed in cross-examination.
Well, the objection would be relevance.
Uh,
And
relevant-
perhaps I should probably send the jury out to hear the response to that objection.
So, in your 23 years, you're aware of escapes by someone using braided sheets to escape from jail?
I'm aware of somebody using sheets. I don't recall if they were braided or not.
If you found an inmate with sheets that had been braided into a length, would that cause you concerns?
Yes, it would.
And that certainly would not be allowed, would it?
No, sir.
That would not be compliant with it.
No, sir, it wouldn't.
You're an out-pass witness.
Officer Payton, just a few follow-up questions, please. If you, you stated in your questioning to, or answers to Mr. Cobb, that you weren't aware of any note discovered that Mr. Daniel was tracking officers' movements. Is that correct?
That is true.
And if you had discovered in the cell of an inmate a note with the names of officers and tracking their movements, is that something you would have confiscated and sent up the chain of command?
Yes, sir.
Because that would have looked suspicious to you and been a threat?
Yes, sir.
So you would have definitely confiscated it and sent it up to the proper authorities so they could deal with that, correct?
Yes, sir.
You never heard of any sort of discipline or copying of any notes of the type, correct?
I'm not aware of it.
Okay. And you've been at HSB since 2008, correct?
Yes, sir.
The whole time that Mr. Daniel has been there, right?
That's true.
And you didn't hear about that from other deputies at all, correct?
I did not.
But you did hear from other deputies that there was a noose with some braided sheets down in Mr. Daniels' cell, correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, more than one noose, correct?
I don't recall if there was more than
Were
one.
you on the shift when Mr. Daniel attempted suicide and was taken to the hospital?
I don't think that I was, but I don't recall. I wasn't on that unit in particular.
Okay. But you heard about it from other deputies, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was aware of it.
Because you guys talk and relay information to each other, especially if it's important with regard to a particular inmate and their safety and care, correct?
For the most part, if something happened on our, what we call our Friday, then we have 2 days off, we might not be privy to that information by the time that Monday rolls around.
Okay. Absolutely.
Deputy Payton, you aware that he claimed that he attempted suicide? The defendant?
I'm not sure if I'm aware of that or not.
No one saw him make a suicide attempt, did they?
I don't think so. I think he told somebody that he took a bunch of pills and then they dealt with it medically.
Medically, then they never found any evidence that he took any pills.
Right. Whatever they do to get the pills out or whatnot, that's what I know.
Any other questions, Your Honor?
No question, John.
Thank you, Ms. Stepdown.
Long? Trey Long, Your Honor.
You do solemnly swear the testimony that you will now give to me before this court will be the truth, the truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Yes, sir.
Can I proceed, Your Honor? Officer Long, could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Trey Reeves Long.
And Officer Long, how are you employed?
Sorry,
How are you employed?
I'm a corrections officer.
You work A shift with Officer Payton and Officer Lowe, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And during your time at HSB, have you had contact with a prisoner by the name of Brandon Daniels?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in what capacity have you had contact with him?
We get assigned different units, different days, and I've worked the units where he's been housed.
And which unit do you know that he currently housed in?
He's housed in B unit.
Okay. And has he always been in B unit since the time you were there? Has he moved
No,
around?
sir. He before that he was in D unit, David East.
Okay. And are they similar units or are they just different levels?
No, sir. D unit we house psych observation inmates.
Okay. And psych observation, you mean like with people who need to be watched for possible suicide attempts or harming themselves or others be placed in there?
Yes, sir.
And have you had an opportunity to observe him both in B unit and also in his current unit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with regard to your dealings with him, now I know you can't speak for other people, with regard to your dealings for him, has he ever given you any sort of problems in, say, for when you have to feed him or move him or do anything like that?
For myself, no, sir.
Okay. Has he always been compliant with you and obeyed you when you asked him to do something?
Yes, sir.
Now, you're aware that he's had some incidents while he's been at HSB, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you've only been deputy for 3.5 years. Are you familiar with inmates making hooch?
Yes, sir.
And in that 3 years, about how many times have you caught inmates making hooch?
Probably about once or twice.
Okay. Were you aware of him fastening a noose and having it in one of his cells?
I was told about it. Yes, sir.
And that happened on more than one occasion that you're aware of, or just the once?
I'm only aware of the once.
Okay. Let me ask you something. If an inmate were, say, writing a letter, and that letter purported to have movements of guards and the guards' names or the corrections officer's names, and you saw that in the cell or discovered it in the cell during shakedown, I assume you perform shakedowns?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you discovered that, would that be of importance to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would that be something that you would turn over to your supervisors for investigation?
Yes, sir.
Because that sounds like a potential threat or escape or something like that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, as far as you know, there was nothing like that turned over with regard to Mr. Daniels, correct?
I'm not aware.
Now, it's fair to say that if you're maybe shift changing with another officer or something like that coming in, and you had an issue with a particular inmate that day, and there need to be some information relayed to that inmate for officer safety or inmate safety, you would relay that information, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're also aware, or are you aware of the fact that Mr. Daniels was moved from HSB for a suicide attempt?
I'm aware of the suicide attempt. Yes, sir.
And was that one of the incidents that required him to be placed in the D unit for observation?
At that time, he was placed in violent cell, to suicide cell, and E unit.
Okay, and is that also called a slick cell?
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell me about the slick cell. What is that like?
It's a padded cell that really there's nothing hard where they can possibly injure themselves.
Okay, are they given a particular style blanket that is safer than, say, the one you normally issue?
Yes, sir.
What's that blanket called?
We just call it a suicide blanket. I don't know the correct name for it.
All right, and you're smiling a little. Why do you call it a suicide blanket?
Just because I don't know the actual name to it.
Okay. Is it a blanket that's more difficult to rip or tear or anything?
That's
like that?
what I've been told.
Okay. And are the inmates that are placed in those six cells for observation, are they fully clothed or are they?
No, sir.
No. Are they? What do they wear?
Well, actually, in the suicide cells, it's a gown, and it has Velcro on it, so you can actually Velcro it into a gown that hangs off the shoulders.
Hey, is it a cloth gown or a paper gown or?
Cloth gown.
Okay. And they're not given anything, or are they given items that they can?
No, sir.
So it's just them in a cell with a suicide blanket and a urinal, nothing else.
That's correct.
Pass the switch.
How are you doing, Officer Long?
I'm good.
Just a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Were you aware, back on 19th of November of 2013, the defendant getting sent to HSB for an injury caused by him doing a homemade tattoo on his arm?
Yes, sir.
That's one of the things you can get sent to HSB for, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
It doesn't mean that you're depressed or suicidal or anything like that, does it?
No, sir.
You Is it legal to put on tattoos in jail?
No, sir.
That's against the rules also, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's not compliant, is it?
No, sir.
How hard is it to get sent to HSB for a suicide? Not a completed suicide, of course, but can you just say I feel suicidal and that'll get you there?
Yes, sir.
Can you say I'm thinking about hurting myself and that'll get you there?
Yes, sir.
It's really easy to get to HSB, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You don't have to really be suicidal to get there, do you?
No, sir.
You're an outpass witness.
Officer Long, with regard to the homemade tattoo, was that the first time you ever heard of an inmate making a tattoo inside the prison?
No, sir.
Is that an uncommon occurrence or a common occurrence?
It's not something you see that often, but I have seen it before.
Okay. Safe to say that it happens in prison?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, sir.
Just because all the criminals are doing it, it's still against the rules, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
That's all I have.
You want to approach?
raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may right now give before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Good morning, Dr. Escoff.
Good morning.
My name is Brad Luke, as you know, and we've met before, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I traveled to Colorado to meet you, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you tell me, sir, where is it that you are currently employed?
I'm employed with the Agricultural Systems Research Unit, USDA Agriculture Research Service in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Okay. And you were employed then by the federal government, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And when we met, we discussed your coming down here to testify live in person, is that correct?
That's correct.
And through some problems we had, with the federal government, and we weren't able to secure your attendance or agreement to secure your attendance to testify here live. So if you could, sir, hello? I've lost you, Mr. Anscombe. Dr. Anscombe.
All right. So now, thank you. I'm here. Don't worry.
Okay. I need to stay in the camera here, or else I'll be talking to the desk behind you or the door behind you. All right. This is new to me too, so I've never had to question anybody through video conference, so you'll have to bear with me. Okay, so you stated that you work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Can you tell me, explain exactly what you do for the U.S. Department of Agriculture?
Yes, I'm a research hydraulic engineer. My job here, my role with this unit is as basically we develop computer models for farmers and other commercial groups, commodity groups in Colorado. We develop very complex agro-ecosystem models. I mean, these models are computer representations of what goes on out in the actual field, and we're looking at helping farmers with management recommendations on how to apply chemicals, what type of crops to plant in terms of best minimizing adverse environmental impacts due to chemical movement on the surface and the subsurface, chemicals meaning nitrogen, pesticides, things like that. I also do field work, experimental research on farmers' farms to collect data to then use to evaluate the models.
Okay, and I didn't clear this up before, but I want to clear it up now. You're not testifying in a capacity here as a representative of the U.S. government, are you?
I'm testifying based on a professional relationship I had with Brandon Daniel through the work that he did as a CSU student.
Okay, great. Now, you stated that he did some work for you as a USC student. Could you explain how exactly that worked?
Yes. Typically when the government doesn't have expertise in a certain area, and in this case it would be computer programming, we're talking about developing interfaces for our models, complex interfaces. So in the case of hiring Brandon, we went to Colorado State University and I created what's known as a special cooperative agreement, an SCA. So then federal money is sent over to CSU, and then CSU handles the hiring process, and then they are typically the supervisors of the student. The students come and work on objectives that the USDA has, and then we meaning the USDA scientists such as myself, provide technical guidance to the student.
So in a simplified way, it's a work-study kind of program?
Yes, it is. The students are there's certain requirements in terms of the number of hours the students can work and how they work. But yes, it's essentially it's a work study program. It's a student employment. It's just through CSU. So CSU handles the logistics. The USDA area scientists provide technical guidance.
Okay, and so you stated that Brandon was hired through this program by CSU, and then came to you. When he came to you, did you make the final decision on his hiring, or did you have to interview him and approve that, or you just had to take it?
No, when we start this process, I will send over a position description to CSU, and my counterpart at CSU that I worked with was the former department head. He was named Dr. Luis Garcia, department head of civil environmental engineering. So I gave a position description to Luis about the type of person I would like to hire. Luis then advertises that at CSU, and students apply. I then, with some other ARS colleagues, interview multiple students, and then we go back over with recommendations to Luis, and then I discuss this with Luis, and then Luis makes the decision on whom to hire, with obviously with input from me.
So did you yourself interview Brandon?
I interviewed Brandon with a couple of other individuals, scientists as well here. So.
Okay. And as part of that interview process, describe that a little bit. Do they just come in a suit and sit down and talk to you, or do they actually have to show you some of their work or something like that?
We ask the students ahead of time to bring in examples of their work. All of them are typically juniors. The work we're doing that we were requiring is fairly high-level Java programming, so we ask students to bring in examples of Java programs that they have developed or produced, either on their own or as part of their classwork. We just want to have a good indication that they know, Java and they can program that.
Okay. And when you interviewed Brandon, did Brandon bring you an example of his work?
Yes, Brandon brought an example of kind of a bookkeeping accounting program that he had developed while I'm not sure, I don't remember if it was either for a job that he held or that his mom had held, but it was for a business that one of the two had worked out part-time as employment, so Brandon wrote the program to handle bookkeeping for the business.
Okay. Now, have you, as part of your position and part of this program at CSU, had you interviewed students prior to Brandon and seen examples of their work as well?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And with regard to the example of work that Brandon brought you, can you tell me how it measured up to those, or what it was like in comparison to the others that you'd seen?
Well, it was much better. A lot of the students come over with just kind of very small applications or little snippets of code. Some they don't even bring example application. They just bring code, so they don't exactly do what we would like. But Brandon was able to demonstrate what was a fairly functional and fairly well-developed software program, and that coupled with additional questioning that we asked in terms of his knowledge of Java led me to recommend Brandon for the position.
Okay. So when Brandon started working with you, what was your impression of him when he first started working with you?
I thought he was a sharp kid. I thought he did very well, very easy to work with, and I was pleased that we had hired him. I thought I'd made the right decision.
Okay. And as that relationship continued and you started working on projects with him, did that opinion change, or did it solidify, or tell me about that?
No, it solidified. Brandon did an excellent job. He was working on programs that the interfaces that we have for our models are extremely complicated. The code is very complicated. The code is far and above and beyond what they're taught at Colorado State University, so they have to learn a lot of things on their own. And Brandon's a very good programmer.
Okay, when you say very good, how would you describe him? Would you describe him average, just above average, or exceptional? How would you describe that?
He was an extremely good programmer, well above average. I've had 5 students. Brandon was the first student we hired. Since then, we now have hired 5 others over the past few years, and with the exception of one I have right now who is close or equivalent to Brandon, those 2 are far, far and away better than anybody we've had.
Okay. Now, you stated that he had worked on you with the project. I didn't pretend to understand what the project did, but could you explain to me a little bit about that project?
Sure, I just alluded to it briefly a few minutes ago, but basically our models are very complex, and our models are spatial, meaning they work across multiple areas of land units, so we have we have interfaces that we're developing for them, and but what Brandon did was combine all these interfaces into one tool, kind of a general interface that you could run and work with multiple models under a single interface. So the interface was very complex. It was geospatial. It had geographic information system information in it. I don't know if that means much to you guys, but I'm sure a lot of people have heard of GIS, or Geographic Information Systems. So, so the interface, basically is a front end for multiple models, and then the advance in this interface over other interfaces of its type around the world is on the back end of it. The system had very, very advanced, and has very, very advanced features to visualize output coming out from the model. So,
Okay, so in a nutshell, or in a sense, and you can correct me if I'm just oversimplifying it, but in a sense, what Brandon did for you was help you take a lot of data from a lot of different programs and source it and organize it into a single interface so it can be used a little bit easier and maybe seen graphically in a representation rather than charts and graphs and such?
that's correct, but it wasn't necessarily data, it was code. So Brandon took some existing code we had, plus he wrote a tremendous amount of code on his own to develop this interface, and then as part of that interface, he integrated all of the other modeling tools we have under that interface and wrote additional tools to do this output visualization like you just described.
Okay, and so when you say he wrote a tremendous amount of code, what does that mean about, if you could put it in a number, what could you put?
Well, I think the system, I don't know exactly in terms of number of lines it has right now. It has well over 30,000 lines of code. We tend to look at systems more as with components of the number of modules or subprograms they had. So Brandon wrote many subprograms, 60, 70, 80, if not more than that, subprograms to do the things that we've just described.
Okay, and what is the practical function of this program?
The practical function of it is that you can work with multiple models under a same interface, but the main advantage of it is it provides a visually appealing tool to be able to work with, like I said, multiple groups, and we can show these model runs to farmers and things like that. So it represents a significant advancement in how model output is visualized spatially. That's the real key here. This is a tool for spatial visualization, looking at multiple spatial units at one time.
Okay, so you mentioned farmers. Does this tool or this program assist farmers in their planting of crops and daily running of their businesses?
What we've done with this tool is we've taken certain pieces of it, and this tool has been released to different groups, not just in the U.S., but in other places in the world where there are different counterparts to, like the USDA, agricultural organizations, and then scientists within those groups are working with other users, including farmers, on how to make management recommendations for, again, chemical use, nitrogen application, things like that.
So part of the work that Brandon did with you is still being used around the world?
Yes, well, the model itself is, the whole system has been expanded greatly since Brandon first worked on it. Like I said, there have been additional students, additional models have been added in, so we're continuing to do additional testing and additional improvement of the program.
Okay, so let me ask you, I sent you some documents a couple of days ago, and kind of showing it to you here. Do you have those documents in front of you?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell me if you recognize what it was that I sent you?
Yeah, she sent me the cover page for a book that was recently written called Advances in Nitrogen Management for Water Quality.
Okay.
And then you sent a book chapter on that where Brandon and I are co-authors on that book chapter.
Okay. So, excuse me just a minute. All right. So, yourself and Brandon so you recognize this book as the chapter that I sent you fairly and accurately represent the chapter from the entire book that was released.
That's correct.
Okay. And this is the book that I sent you, and that I think I also have a copy of. Is that right?
Yes, I've lost my video feed to you. I don't have it anymore. Can you still see me?
Yeah, I can still see you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. But you, if you'll excuse me just one second, Jim. Brother, we asked that defense 14 be admitted.
No objection, Your Honor.
Can you still not see me?
I can't see. The frame froze about a minute ago.
How about now?
It looks like it's refreshing. I'll tell you in a second.
Okay.
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right. So this chapter that I have, essentially, I'm going to ask you to turn to page 400, if you would.
Okay.
And on 400, there's a figure, and it's figure 10. Can you see that?
I can.
Okay. Is that tell me what that is.
That is the back-end visualization that I was describing in terms of different ways that the output from the model can be visualized.
Okay. And so, as far as figure 10 goes, is this Brandon's work?
It is Brandon's work.
Okay. And this was included in the textbook that I just showed you.
That's correct.
With permission to publish if you're Okay. While that's going around, I can continue with some questions with you. Now, how long did Brandon work with you?
Brandon started in April of 2009 and worked up until just before Christmas of 2010, so approximately 18 months.
Now, you stated that Brandon's work had some practical value out there in the world, but on a personal level, did his work, or actually professional level, did his work benefit you at all?
Yes. As an ARS scientist, we go through different phases and levels from different GS levels, and this past May I was promoted to a GS-15, which is essentially the highest level, the base level that an ARS scientist can be promoted to. As part of the promotion case, we're allowed to submit 8 exhibits or 8 accomplishments, and one of those accomplishments centered around the tool that Brandon helped start here. So.
Okay. So would you say that helped you in getting promoted?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Now, did there come a time after that Brandon started applying for jobs? Do you recall that?
Brandon started applying for jobs about October, November of 2010, in the fall, and I think fairly quickly was offered a chance to interview with HP.
Okay. Did he interview with any other companies or just HP?
I don't recall. I think probably just HP.
You don't recall whether he was interviewed by Microsoft?
He was called by Microsoft to interview, but had already. This was after he had interviewed with HP, and I think had already decided that he wanted to go to Austin. So HP wanted him to come and interview, but Brandon did not accept the interview. He wanted to go to HP in Austin.
You mean Microsoft wanted him to interview?
I mean Microsoft. That's correct.
Okay. All right. But he had already decided then that he wanted to come and work at HP.
That's correct.
Okay. Did he ever talk to you about that, or whether you should take the job, or pursue something else, or continue his education?
I asked Brandon if he wanted to stay and go to grad school. Before that, in the summer of 2010, we had talked about Brandon going to grad school, and he mentioned that would be a possibility. So I told him if he wanted to go to grad school, we could continue on, with his employment and pay him. And as we got to the fall, Brandon then informed me that he wanted to go out into the real world and earn money. So he said he was no longer interested in grad school.
Okay. So did you keep in contact
A few times. There were some things I needed, help with in terms of the programming that he had done that I didn't understand. So I sent him various emails, and he responded, helping me out. And then a couple of emails on how things were going at HP, and Brandon sent back some email with a picture of the team and telling me that the projects that he was working on were doing very well, and that he had been promoted. I think that he was one of the team leaders or something like that. So those email exchanges were probably the first 4 to 5 months into 2011, and then after that we did not have any more contact.
Okay. In his emails, did he seem excited about his work? Did he seem to be enjoying it?
I think that's fair. I mean, they were fairly, the first 2 emails were of a technical nature on, again, the programming we were working on. The other ones were he, I think he was, very proud of the work he was doing. He seemed to, I think he said he enjoyed it and that he was enjoying his job.
Okay, great. Now, would you say that you characterize your relationship as mostly a professional relationship with Brandon?
That's correct.
Did you have much contact with him personally in the social setting?
We went out to lunch. I took him out to lunch maybe 3 or 4, probably four times during the time he worked. So.
Okay. And
but other than that, no contact.
Okay.
Just outside of work.
So how did you come to feel about Brandon to work with him?
I thought he was he was a quiet, respectful kid who worked very hard. He wanted to come in. He wanted to earn money. He wanted to do well.
Okay. And when you heard about Brandon killing a police officer here in Austin, what was your thought?
I was absolutely stunned. I heard it from I heard it from the scientist who's the lead author of the book chapter you showed me, because we worked a little bit with Brandon and I worked with this scientist, and he called me the Sunday morning, I think it's the 8th of April after the shooting, and said, have you seen the newspaper? The shooting was on the front page of the Four Columns, Colorado. And I said, no, what's going on? He goes, there's a Brandon Daniel who shot and killed an officer. And then I said, I was absolutely stunned. I said, you're sure it's this Brandon? And so I read through the article, and I was shocked, horrified, both that it was Brandon and that a police officer who was young with children like I have had lost his life. It's horrendous.
Okay. So, had you ever heard about any other issues Brandon might have had with the law or drug use? Did you have any knowledge of that whatsoever?
Not that I could say conclusively. Once when we went to lunch, Brandon drove, and I noticed what might have looked like marijuana or some paraphernalia in his car, but I'm not familiar with that in general, so didn't say anything. Brandon did mention one time at lunch that, because we were talking about, just in general about, he had bought a new car, and we were talking about his car, he had said that he had a motorcycle, and he did mention that he had had a run-in with the police on his motorcycle.
Okay.
Those are the only 2 things.
Those are the only 2 things that you remember him talking about?
Those are the only 2 things that I remember him talking about.
Just a moment, okay?
That's correct.
And you and Brandon, as well as a few others, are listed as co-authors of this chapter. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. We'll pass the witness. Jim, somebody has some questions for you. Then
Wonderful.
See you again. Okay.
Is it Dr. Askoff?
Yes, it is.
My name is Bill Bishop. I'm with the District Attorney's Office.
All right.
If you have any trouble hearing me or if I speak too fast or unclearly, please let me know, all right?
All right, great.
When he was at the USDA, was he getting credit for his work or was he getting paid or both? Do you know?
He, again, he's an official employee of Colorado State University, so he's paid through Colorado State University. We have a building near Colorado. The USDA is a building near the Colorado State University campus. He was working in this building. I was providing technical guidance to him on the construction of this interface for our models.
And so was most of his work done in your building or was it done at his room or wherever it may have been?
It was done in our building.
So he would travel to that building and he had an actual office?
He had a cubicle, yes.
A government office?
A government office.
And what title would you give him? Is he a computer programmer or what's he doing?
We just call him, officially, he's just a student assistant, a student researcher.
Okay, but as far as describing what it was he was doing, is he writing
Oh.
code or?
He's writing code. He's performing computer programming duties.
And you stated he was one of the best you've worked with at the college level, is that correct?
He's a very good programmer.
And there's a pretty good market for that, is there not?
There is, that's correct.
So when he got out of Colorado State, the world was kind of at his feet, right?
I would agree. I encouraged him to wait, and because Microsoft wanted to interview him, I encouraged him to wait and go see what Microsoft would do, but he liked the warm weather in Austin, so he wanted to go to HP there.
So essentially in December of 2010, when he left USDA and Colorado State, he pretty much came straight to Austin. That was your understanding, correct?
That was my understanding.
He packed up the car and he moved here.
He did, yes.
And how often would he come into the building and work with you?
While he was in class, so he was still finishing up some classes, like all the students I've had, I tell them when I interview them and hire them that I'd like them to work about 20 hours a week. So it just depends on, I think with Brandon, like all students, it's variable. Some are in, typically a minimum to get in 20 hours, they have to be in at least 3 times a week to 4 times a week. In the summer, they can work full time. So during the summer months, like the summer of 2010, Brandon worked full time. So in every day.
And every day he came in, you'd see him?
I'd see him.
And did he ever speak to you of Jenna Phelan?
Is that his girlfriend?
It
I
wasn't
don't
the
know.
top.
I don't recall the name.
Okay, but did he speak of his girlfriend?
Yeah, he spoke of his girlfriend.
And often, or how did that?
Not often. Just like I said, the 3 or 4 times that we would go to lunch, and I'd ask him about his life, where he grew up, and then he mentioned he had a girlfriend, and I think she was working at a Pizza Hut near where we were having pizza. So once I dropped him off because he wanted to go in and see her, but he just that he had a girlfriend.
And given your level of contact with him during that time period, would it surprise you that she described his college life as smoking marijuana daily?
Yes.
Would it surprise you that she described him drinking daily?
Yes.
Would it surprise you that she testified that he routinely used ecstasy during his college experience?
Very much so.
She also described cocaine. Would that surprise you?
It would.
Okay. She described mushrooms.
Yes. Surprised me.
That would surprise you. And also described that he took acid during his college experience. Would that surprise you?
It would.
So if those things are true, it'd be fair to say there was a lot going on that you don't know about while he was at Colorado State.
Apparently so.
Okay. You described an incident, or described him describing an incident involving an altercation with the police on a motorcycle.
That's correct.
Do you remember the details of that description?
Brandon, but we were just talking about the motorcycle in general, and I had said I had a motorcycle in college, and Brandon just said he had a motorcycle that he liked to drive around and drive fast on, and that he had a run with the police officer, and that it was a fast bike, and he, ran away from the police officer.
And he was successful.
I think that's correct.
And what was his demeanor when he described that event?
Just straightforward. I mean, just not necessarily gloating or I was glad I did this. He just said just matter of fact.
He wasn't proud of it,
Not especially so, no.
but he wasn't embarrassed about it either?
He wasn't embarrassed about it either.
Pardon me just a second. All right, thank you, Doctor. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Esco, I just have a few questions for you. Is it fair to say that when your students leave your office, that you don't know what they do or where they go?
That's correct.
Okay. So with regard to the incident that you described earlier, that you saw him with some drug paraphernalia in the car, that was the only indication that you had that he'd been smoking marijuana or possibly doing it?
That was the only indication. I never saw him, as far as I could tell, impaired or, at that when he was working for me.
Okay. So every time you saw him, if you're sober and working and worked confidently with you?
That's correct.
So did you come to like Brandon as a person?
I thought he was like I said, I thought he was a likable person. He's very quiet, but he, came in, sat down, and worked very hard.
Thank you, Dr. Ascot.
You're welcome.
All right. I think that's it for us, Jim. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Our next witness will be Lee Carter.
All right.
I would ask for an opportunity to take the witness on board to hire prior to testimony.
All right. Would you read the recess vote?
As to the extent of conclusions he's going to testify to before the jury.
Okay, so then we would be the defense to get to that area. That's the area that we're supposed to review.
Colonel, I don't know if Mr. Bishop just wants to ask the questions or if he wants me to proffer the testimony. I'm not exactly sure what the commission wants. Prefer them proffer the testimony. All right, Dr. Carter, we're here outside the presence of the jury, and so we have to proffer essentially what conclusions you've reached evaluation of Mr. Daniels. So first of all, can you explain what you reviewed in order to prepare for evaluation of Brandon and your testimony?
I reviewed considerable information provided to you, or provided to me by you, that included all of the Austin PD records, which was over 600 pages. I saw the video of the actual index offense. I had access to Mr. Daniels' prior academic records, his employment records, his discipline records at school, high school discipline records, his high school transcript. I saw transcripts from grand jury testimony offered by 2 women that were connected to him, transcript of his interview with police officers shortly after the index offense, as well as audio recordings of the same.
And did you also interview Mr. Daniels?
Yes, on 2 different occasions. The first time was about the second week or so of January. I interviewed him for about 4 or 5 hours at the Del Valley Jail, and then I saw him again about maybe 3 weeks ago, again at the Del Valley Jail. I saw him about 2 hours then.
And your professional background, just for record purposes, is that you are a licensed psychologist in the Waco area. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you regularly testify in this and other courts?
Yes.
On what types of areas do you regularly testify?
More often than not, when I testify in court, it has to do with child sex abuse. That's one of my major areas of expertise. Probably 60 to 65% of the criminal trials I testify in have to do with that subject matter. I testify several times per year on other criminal offenses. Commonly, when I do that, it's as a defense expert in cases such as this or other types of offenses.
Okay. But do you testify at the request both of the defense and of the state?
Yes.
And in this case, what areas, generally speaking, do you intend to testify about with respect to Mr. Daniels?
I anticipate that much of my testimony will have to do with Mr. Daniels' psychological development, how he got to be who he is today, and I will speak of his level of depression, how that played a role in his bad acts through the years, and how that impacts who he is today. I suspect that will be one of the major things we'll speak about through my testimony.
You may testify about the extent of substance abuse, is that correct?
Yes.
You may testify about the nature of depression and how a person experiences depression.
Yes.
And you may testify about his prognosis in terms of dealing with that depression going forward.
Yes.
And you may testify also about institutional adjustment, in other words, how he may respond to being in a controlled structure like the penitentiary.
Yes.
Are those all areas that you're qualified to testify about?
Yes.
Do you also do evaluations in a prison parole setting?
Yes, I've done approximately 100 evaluations in prison for attorneys who are parole attorneys, and so I have seen a number of people who committed an offense 5, 10, 15, sometimes 30 years prior, and I'm asked to look at them from a psychological standpoint after the fact, which is a quite interesting experience.
And so what is the actual diagnosis you would make of Brandon Daniel if you're prepared to make a diagnosis of these?
I think he has a major depressive disorder. I think it's severe. I think it's recurrent. I also think he has some personality disordered features. He's an avoidant personality, has some schizoid personality features, meaning he keeps to himself, has some odd and peculiar thoughts. I don't know that he has a prototypical antisocial personality disorder, but he does have some features common to individuals with an antisocial personality disorder.
Okay. And are these opinions that you're prepared to give, are they opinions that are based on scientifically reliable instruments in your training, and would they be presented in a reliable manner?
Yes.
And these types of things you'll be talking about and the types of evaluations you've done are generally accepted in the scientific community. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Your Honor, we'll pass the witness report. Dr. Carter, you indicated that one of the things you do is review people who are in prison hoping for release. Is that correct?
Yes.
And part of that evaluation is to determine if they're a future danger if they are released.
Yes.
Did you make any assessment or findings as to those issues in this particular case?
I did not do a risk assessment of him, no. I didn't complete any psychological tests at the request of the defense.
So you can't testify as to any nature of future danger based on the request of the defense, is that correct?
Not in the sense of testing findings. If questions are posed to me either by the defense counsel or prosecution regarding the kinds of things that are looked for in that regard, I could speak to that.
In general terms, but not specifically as to Mr. Daniel?
Right.
You didn't perform any behavioral or psychopathy testing on Mr. Daniel?
Correct.
And those are things you would normally rely on in making those opinions of an individual's future danger?
Correct.
And you've relied on those in the past?
Yes.
I know.
All right. Are we ready to bring the man to either of you need a rescue break? As I anticipate this will take at least an hour.
So what did you say?
You need a rescue?
If I could go there.
Okay, we'll take
Because you're all free.